Hi everyone. Hopefully this won't take very long, but I want to make sure that you are 100% comfortable with what I'm asking you to do. So once again, rather than just leave you to read the instructions and potentially feel overwhelmed, I'm going to review things with you. I've numbered the pages of the instructions, so it comes out to be 8 pages, which sounds like a lot, but this is because I made the print very large, as you can see, so that I could space it well and it wouldn't be all jumbled together and again make anyone feel overwhelmed. So despite typed instructions, there are always certain things that people overlook. So obviously at the very top, the first thing it tells you is that you must watch this video, and it would be a mistake not to do so. You're then going to be able to use this checklist to go through everything. If you recall, part 1, you could earn 35 points. So the balance of the 100, which would be the total grade for the project, is 65. This 65 points is going to be much more challenging to earn than that first 35 were. So I want to make certain that we're all on the same page. So the first step is that you're going to follow the instructions here, and you're going to set up a MyFitnessPal account. Now, MyFitnessPal, as I'm sure many of you know, is an online free system or program where you can record food. And the first thing I want to tell you is going to surprise you. I don't like MyFitnessPal. And so now you're thinking, well, then why in the heck are we using it? Well, we're using it because it's free. That's one of the reasons. We're also using it because it has probably the most vast array of items in its system compared to any other similar programs. And we're using it because it's a simple way to accomplish what I want you to accomplish here. I could ask you to do all this manually, and that would be no fun. So let me tell you what it is I don't like about it, because there's some value in you knowing that. That's part of the lesson itself. The reason I don't like it for people to use in their everyday life is because everybody focuses on the calories instead of the nutrition. So people go through the day entering their food and they feel like, yay, I've accomplished my goal at the end of the day if their calories totaled up. They never pay attention to whether or not the carbohydrate, the protein, and the fat were properly balanced, because they usually don't even understand those sorts of things. Sometimes they think it's good if they have high protein and low carb, or vice versa, because they know very little about nutrition. And so it draws people into a focus on calories, whereas, as I've communicated to you thus far, really it should be flipped. We should all be focusing on good nutrition, in which case the calories tend to fall in line accordingly. Also, because the system has so many different things in it, packaged foods, restaurant foods, it doesn't deter people from choosing those items. And again, they're not thinking healthful, they're just thinking, does this fall within my calories? So it creates that illusion that as long as one's calories are right, nothing else matters. And then people go around thinking they're healthy just based on their weight, which is a mistake. So as a rule, that's why I wouldn't want the average person to use it, at least not without some guidance explaining the importance of nutrition first. The other thing is that when people enter things into MyFitnessPal, they don't realize that the choices that they're making aren't the right choice. So I'm going to show you in a moment what I mean, but someone might put in banana, and over to the right it will give them the option of the size. And it might say one small, one medium, one large, and they just pick the first one they see, when in reality they didn't eat a small banana, they ate a large banana. Or it might say pasta, and over to the right it has 30 grams, and they go, oh, I guess that's right, when they have no clue what 30 grams is. Would you? Would you be able to right now show me what 30 grams of a certain amount of food is? Probably not. So you have to be very specific and find the measures that actually represent the amount consumed accurately. Takes a little time and practice, and people tend to be a little impatient and hasty. So that's part of the reason that in the first part of this project, I had you be very specific about the measures, because you're going to be entering that stuff here in part 2, and I didn't want you stumbling all over the place. So when you go to enter things, it's already been thought out in part 1. Don't change the game. Just be sure you find the right measures. And brands can make a difference as well. So if you know the brand of something, like the peanut butter that you have recorded in part 1, which you know would be some sort of unsweetened peanut butter, then it's best, because not all brands are created equal, as well as the fact that the choices matter. So if you have indicated in part 1 that you'll be having a salad that's made of greens and tomatoes and carrots and peas, then you have to enter greens. And then you have to enter tomatoes, and then you have to enter carrots, and then you have to enter peas. Because if you go into the system and you select salad, we have no idea what is in that salad or how much of any ingredient. And therefore, the nutrient content of your salad versus the quote-unquote salad that's programmed into MyFitnessPal are not going to be the same. So those were a lot of really important details. And there's one other thing, and this is actually not a big deal for our purposes, but I want you to appreciate that I need you to pay attention here. First, the sodium content for whole foods like broccoli or raw chicken is not in MyFitnessPal. It tends to put a 0 for all of that. Now, you know that all plants come out of the earth and that the earth's crust is made out of minerals and that sodium's a mineral. So every plant that comes out of the earth has to have at least a little bitty bit of sodium. So to say 0 clearly is inaccurate. You also know that animals eat plants and that we eat animals. Therefore, animals have sodium. And so when it tells you your chicken has no sodium, that's incorrect. But because the amounts of naturally occurring sodium in whole foods are so very low, I'm really not going to get too worked up over that. And so just know that when it says 0, there actually is some sodium in there. It's a little bit deceiving. Now, here's where the concern comes in. The flip side. When you select things in MyFitnessPal, look at the sodium column after it populates into your little spreadsheet there in the system. Remind yourself what I just said. Foods from nature have very small amounts of sodium. 1 gram, 3 grams, 5 grams, milligrams. 1 milligram, 3 milligrams, 5 milligrams, 30 milligrams. Not big whopping numbers like 500 milligrams. So if you put in sweet potato and it tells you that your sweet potato has 800 milligrams, something's wrong. MyFitnessPal has a lot of weird sodium errors, and you need to pick a different item because we're not using a bunch of prepared and processed foods that are full of sodium preservatives. So really, we shouldn't have a whole lot of high sodium numbers unless you put in a seasoning that contains salt or you put in salt itself. So I'm asking you to keep your perspective there and ask for my assistance if you have any doubts. So all of that being said, let me walk you through what I want you to do here. And yes, you need to create a whole new MyFitnessPal account, even if you already have one, because it's just going to prevent any confusion. So, right here is what it would look like when you go to myfitnesspal.com. You create a username. I'm going to make something up. And an email, and you create a password. So once you have put in your username and password, it brings you to this screen. And you're going to put in all of your personal information, which hopefully you do know, your weight. You're going to have to change the height accordingly. I do not want you to put in a goal weight. So if you're sitting here thinking, I want to lose weight, let's not do that. We need to keep it simple for our purposes here. This is just a course project. This is not a real life plan that I'm determined that you're going to follow. So just keep it simple. It'll make it easier for you. It'll make it easier for me. Be sure and select your gender. I'm fairly certain that the system is going to require you to enter your personal information, so put whatever is correct for you. into the system here. Not that it matters if that's correct. Again, I have no idea how much this matters, but it'll probably flag you. Now, when you get down here, I have to tell you something important. MyFitnessPal is calculating how many calories that you need. It's using a specific mathematical formula. In clinical dietetics, the world of nutrition science, there are different mathematical formulas that we use to estimate calorie needs. So it's never an exact science. And what we do is we plug in things like height, weight, age, activity level, and it spits out this conceptual number. So the thing about it is that the particular formula that is being used in this system, which is called the Harris-Benedict equation, is notorious for overestimating. So it is going to tell you need more than you need just by the nature of how it calculates things. So if you put in an activity level that indicates you are highly active, an already overestimated amount will be even higher. So what I'm asking is that you look at this list here and you ask yourself which one is you in real life, and then you bump it down a notch. So now if you're already sedentary, you can't bump it down any further and you're still sedentary. But if you spend a good part of the day doing some physical activity, I don't want you to select active. I want you to select slightly active. And if you are a super duper workout king or queen, you're not very active here. You're active. Because we have to compensate for that overestimation, and this is how we're going to do it. So I'm just going to select sedentary for demonstration purposes. How many times do you plan on exercising? I'm going to say 0 and 0, but you can put in an honest number. We leave it set to calories, and you see this here? Again, I don't want you guys to set up a diet plan. The problem is that it's going to deduct out a lot of calories. And that means that your calorie amount is going to be so low you won't be able to get enough nutrition. And this is a nutrition course. So the purpose here is to learn about balanced nutrition, not diets. So on this one, hit the select. And I would prefer that you say maintain my current weight. If you are just itching to modify that for weight loss or weight gain, then at the very most you may put in lose 0.5 or gain 0.5, as in 1/2 pound. But I would still suggest that you just do maintain so you can get some perspective on what a day looks like that meets the needs of your current body. Once you do this, you hit save and continue, obviously. And I'm not going to worry about any of this. I'm going to skip that. And now it has told me that I need about 1,500 calories a day, of which 186 grams of carbohydrate will be contributing to those calories. Remember, 45 to 65% of the macronutrient distribution range. The next macronutrient is fat, and that should comprise 50 grams in a day. Remember, if you did 50 times 9, that would tell you what portion of these calories is being contributed. And then the macronutrient protein, you need there's 4 calories in a gram, and you need a certain percentage of your calories to be from protein. So for me, that came out to be about 75 grams per day. So these are the needs that we're focused on for the project here. Let me remind you if the logic is not clicking. You don't have to be focusing on the calories because this plus this plus this equals this, right? 186 grams of carbohydrate. If you do that times 4 is 744 calories. And then if it tells me I need 50 grams of fat and multiply that by 9 calories per gram, that's 450 calories. And then if you did 75 grams of protein times 4 calories per gram, that's 300. And if we add 744, 450, and 300, we get 1490. So when your carb, fat, and protein columns balance out, your calories will as well, with the exception of maybe a couple of calories in one direction or the other. So we go down here and we say get started now. And it sets up your account. You go to food up here at the top. And the very first thing that you want to do is pay attention to the date as you do this. Because every time you log out, you have to go back to this date the next time you log in. If I start typing in my foods now, and then I log out, they'll still be there. But when I log back in tomorrow, the date that I will see will be tomorrow's date. And that means I'll be sitting there going, what happened to all the stuff I entered? Oh my gosh. And then I go, oh, wait a minute, I have to go over here to the back button, and I've got to go back to yesterday. And that's how you're going to remember where you entered things if you don't do this all in one setting. Now, you see how we have calories, carbs, fat, protein. We have one other thing we care about here, sodium. And the system is going to set a default amount of 2,300 milligrams a day. You know that the tolerable upper limit for this particular micromineral, which in excess can be potentially harmful, is around 23 to 2,400 milligrams a day for otherwise healthy people. So we're going to assume that we're all otherwise healthy people. We're not tailoring this project to anyone's unique health conditions because that would make it too complicated. So we're all considered equal for the purposes of this project. Now you should be looking at this column right now and thinking, well, that's just silly that that is even there. We all know that there is no dietary reference intake for total grams of sugar in a day. We know that it's wise to limit added sugar, but we know that when we see the sugar content of an item, whether it's from nature or it's a processed food, that the sugar content represents the combined naturally occurring sugars and any added sugars. So we have no idea how much of something is added sugars in terms of grams. And that's why we don't have recommendations for that. So just like with label reading, it's silly that this is even here. We can ignore the sugar column. I honestly have no clue how this system determined that I need 56 grams of sugar a day, because that would just not make any sense. So hopefully you learned all of that earlier and you know why I'm telling you to ignore this and ultimately to delete this column. So now we're going to go to breakfast and we're going to do add food. And I'm just going to pick something like chicken. And you're thinking, okay, a chicken breast. My suggestion is that you actually put in chicken breast. And if it's raw, which is what I'm assuming you're using because we're cooking these foods, put that in as well. Be as detailed as possible to make your life easier. Now, are you going to come over here and choose this first one where it says 100 grams? I hope not, because again, I bet you have no idea what 100 grams of raw chicken is. So it's telling you one serving of 100 grams. Let's see if there's any other options. Oh, there's one we know, ounces. How many ounces is your chicken breast? 6. And you're going to say add to food diary. You're going to glance at the sodium, and anything that's about 100 or less I'm going to consider to be normal for a whole food, and we'll just leave that one alone. So maybe we go to lunch, and you say unsweet peanut butter. Let's see what we get. Now you've got brands here like Whole Foods, unsweet, no salt. Let's say maybe you were thinking, well, I had a certain brand in mind. Maybe it was Kroger. Let's see what happens if we put that in. Now here's Kroger peanut butter, but you notice it doesn't say unsweet. So you might have to keep going through here and either find that one, or you might have to find something that's comparable by using a different brand like the Whole Foods because the one you wanted wasn't there. It's defaulting to a certain quantity, but that may not be your quantity. So you go over here and you say, well, this is a problem because I had 3 tablespoons. So you go over here, you change it to 1 as a serving, and then you change the number of servings. Now, let's try one other thing that could be a little bit trickier. let's say we're at dinner and we want to account for the fact that we put some salt. I would first of all put iodized salt, since that's what most salt is labeled as, and it'll be easier to find what you need. And hit search. And this is generic iodized salt, table salt, which you and I would probably have in our salt shaker. It defaults to 1/4 of a teaspoon. That might be more than you would use. So maybe you're thinking I'd use like a pinch, which is like 1/8. So you put in 1 teaspoon. You go, well, now I have 1 serving of 1 teaspoon. I don't want a whole teaspoon. Oh no, how do I do 1/8, right? And so if you did 1.0 and you divided it by 8 parts on a calculator, what you get is that 1/8 is 0.125 of a teaspoon. And you add that, and it will record. Now that should have a lot of sodium because nothing but salt, right? So it's not difficult. Now once you've entered everything, you're going to look down here. The totals are the totals of everything you've entered. So I've entered a total of 502 calories. I've entered a total of 50 grams of protein. The daily goals line is what I need. So these are my goals each day to meet my needs. I need 1490 in calories. I need 186 grams of carb. I need about 50 grams of fat, and I need about 75 grams of protein. Do I need 2,300 milligrams of sodium? No, that one's an exception, right? That's the amount which I should not exceed, the tolerable upper limit. So you're not trying to get 2,300 milligrams of sodium, you're trying to get no more than that. So I don't care what the sodium column is, as long as it's not more than 2,300. And again, we're ignoring the sugars column. So let's go back to the typed instructions. After you have created your MyFitnessPal, you go to the food log on page and you enter the day that you plan. I told you here to pay attention to the date, and I reiterated that you need to enter exactly what I approved, as close as possible. And the first thing you need to know is to ignore that sugars column. Once you've entered everything and it's all tallied up, you're going to look at that bottom part and you're going to go, holy cow, there's a huge discrepancy. I only planned for 502 calories, but I need 1490. That's what this last line is telling you. It's telling you the difference, what's remaining, that you still need 988 more calories, that you still need 25 more grams of protein. Ignore this line, guys. You're going to delete this out later. Just don't pay attention. Your goal is to make these two numbers match as closely as possible. So if I get up to 1,486 in this row right here, that's pretty darn close, and you're going to be checking it. So you want to see if there is any discrepancy, because that means that there's excessive or deficient amount. Before you panic, I have given you some wiggle room. So here's what you do. For the calories column in each nutrient, the carbohydrate, the protein, the fat, and the sodium, you divide the total number by the daily total, which are your needs. And then you make it a decimal place and multiply. I've given you an example right here. So I would take the total calories, 502, and I would divide by my goal, which is my needs, 1490, and I would get 0.3369. Well, if I multiply that by 100, that's going to be a problem, right? Are you doing the math with me? I suggest that everybody does this just as a little bit of practice if you have a calculator there. So 0.3369 is 0.34, because 0.336 becomes 0.34. So you're talking about 33 or 34%. That's all that I've planned for here. that means that I'm really deficient. If I've only planned for 34% of my calorie needs, I am grossly deficient. You need to make sure that when you do the math to check that they match closely enough, that percentage is somewhere between 93 to 107%. I know they're not all going to meet 100% perfectly. That's really hard. In fact, 93 to 107% is going to be a bit of a challenge. So I gave you the wiggle room. We're calling 93% close enough to 100. And we are calling 107% close enough to 100. Now, let's say you did the first one and you said, holy cow, I'm over by 115%. She said, I can't be higher than 107. I got 115. How am I going to fix this? That's the challenge here, right? If the totals don't match up, then you have to start thinking. You have to think, what have I learned about nutrition here? I might have to add something to bring up a percent. I might have to take something away. But if I take something away, it's not going to throw my whole healthy eating plan out of balance, is it? I'm not going to lose my 2 colors. I'm not going to lose the protein at my meal, am I? You have to think it through. So you tweak your plan ongoing, and it could be a little frustrating at moments, which is why you're not going to rush and do this at the last minute. I am willing to help you a little bit, but this is your project. You have to work on it first, and only when you have modified, you're at your wit's end, do you consult with me, because otherwise you're just asking me to do your work for you, right? So read this part carefully. I've given you some examples and thoughts to contemplate. And then once you think it's finally lining up, you double check, you calculate those percentages again, and when the calories, the carbohydrate, the protein, the fat are all 93 to 107%, and the sodium is no more than 107%, because we're calling that the same as 100, you know that everything is in order. And once everything is in order, then there's only one thing left to do. You go to your computer, you open up a blank Word document, and then you're going to cut and you're going to paste. You're going to go to your MyFitnessPal Day and you're just going to highlight. I'm just right-clicking and highlighting all the way so that I have my whole record, and then I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to paste. And after it appears, you see there's a whole lot of random stuff here. So all I'm going to do is highlight what I don't need and hit delete. Highlight what I don't need and hit delete. It takes a few minutes to clean it up a little bit, but it's not like it is not doable. And once you have cleaned it up, it'll look nice and organized. It'll be easy for both of us to read. There won't be any confusion about any of the numbers. Just showing you this to show you how incredibly easy. So that ends up with your food records, as well as your totals at the bottom. And obviously you're going to have a long list of food. I just gave you samples. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take out this line you don't need. Delete that. And then you're going to highlight this column that you don't need. Delete that. And now it leaves you with what you need. And then underneath here, you're going to actually type in for me what those percents were. You're going to put in 93% or whatever it is under each respective section so that I can quickly confirm your math and make sure that's correct. And then you are going to summarize in words what you learned from this experience. You're going to sit back and you're going to think, wow, I was challenged by X, Y, and Z because I've never really understood prior to this point that protein was in everything but fruit. I've never really understood how to get healthy fats. Whatever the case may be, you're going to give me a professional paragraph of at least 3 to 4 sentences that conveys your thoughts about what you learned from this experience, because the whole purpose of this is to take a bunch of random information and turn it into something meaningful to see how the knowledge translates in real life. And I want you to take the time to go through this grading rubric, read through it. All of these things here are the things that I had you working on in part 1. But once you've made some edits, you need to make sure it still matches. So go through this list with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that everything matches up. You'll see the points so that you will know exactly how I'm going to grade you. If you have any questions, you let me know. So right now, you might be wondering, how long is this going to take me? I cannot say. It depends who you are, how well you understand things. I would think it's going to take you at least 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours, and maybe 6 or 7 hours, depending upon who you are. So either way, you don't want to wait till the last minute. Even if you want to work on it gradually, that's great, but I would get started sooner rather than later. That way you have time to consult with me as needed. All right, you are on your way.